In today's Mr. Ballen reaction, I think we're going down the route of Paradise Lost. If you haven't seen that film, people have their organs removed to be sold. Anyway, the title of the Mr. Ballen video today is What They Found Inside This Tourist Makes No Sense. It's probably the like button. Let's find out what he does to him. Go on, Mr. Ballen, let's go.
Today, I'm going to tell you two stories that are both true crime cases. And in each of these cases, the evidence, at least initially, it didn't make sense.
Okay.
But as more evidence came in and the police uncovered more and more information, the more bizarre the whole case got.
That doesn't surprise me in Mr. Ballen video.
Stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So, if that's of interest to you, please offer to make the like button a burrito. But don't tell them it's made with cheese and cat food. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
That's minging.
Okay, let's get into today's stories.
That mings. Mr. Ballen, no. Hang on a minute. Something's happened. I'm not the right size. Now I am. Right, back to Mr. Ballen. Solo adventure, let's go.
On the morning of July 18th, 2016, a 17-year-old boy named Mike Mansholt walked into a bike rental shop on a harbor in Malta, which is an island just south of Italy.
In the Mediterranean.
As soon as he walked in there, Mike saw all these rows of mountain bikes lining the walls. And right away, he got very excited for the day ahead, because he was planning with one of these bikes to literally bike across the entire island and explore the Roman ruins that were all over the countryside. And so Mike walked up to the front counter and he asked the clerk for a 1-day rental. And while the clerk went off to get him his bike, Mike grabbed one of the folded up maps that was sitting on the counter and he opened it up. So Mike was from a small town in Germany and he had flown out here to Malta 10 days earlier to visit his girlfriend who was here studying abroad. Right. And so far, the trip really had been awesome. He had spent some excellent time with his girlfriend, and really it had just been great. But Mike only had a few more days left in Malta before he had to fly back home, and he just wanted to do something exciting, something else beyond just seeing his girlfriend. So the previous night...
I've come all this way to see my girlfriend. I don't really want to spend that much time with her, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to Forrest Gump across the country, but on a bike and not running. Forrest Gump wanted to get back to his girl, though. Okay, Jenny.
Exciting, something else beyond just seeing his girlfriend. So the previous night, Mike had checked himself into a hotel near the harbor, specifically so he could spend the rest of his trip exploring the island on his own. And this was actually going to be like a really big deal for him, because he had actually traveled all over the world with his father. So he had done lots of traveling, but this was going to be his first real solo experience. And so now in the bike shop, as the clerk was still busy getting Mike's bike, Mike grabbed a pen and he began circling spots on the map that he had laid out in front of him to sort of designate where he might want to go on his solo trip here.
Right.
And so he looked around and he eventually decided that the catacombs in the center of the map, the very center of the island, would be a good start point. So he circled that. And
anything that involves catacombs, caves, mazes, underground, never ends well. It never ends well. I know where this story's going straight away. I know where it's going. Let's go in a place that I can't find my way out of, and then I'm going to die in there like John Jones in Nutty Putty.
Center of the map, the very center of the island, would be a good start point. So he circled that, and then over on the west side of the island was these cliffs, these very scenic cliffs that he had been told were very beautiful. And so he figured he'd go catacombs and go over to the west side, and he would ride those cliffs and then, you know, sort of spider off from there. The clerk came back over and told Mike he was all set. And then he charged Mike for the bike and also for the map. And then afterwards, Mike headed over to the actual bike that was parked in the store. And after saying bye to the clerk, Mike wheeled the bike outside onto the sidewalk. And then once he was outside, Mike stopped, he pulled off his backpack, he looked inside to make sure he had all the things he needed. And then once he was certain, he zipped it back up, threw it on his back, and got ready to go. But before he actually began pedaling off, he pulled out his phone and he sent his father a voice message saying that he was about to go on this big solo adventure and he would send pictures throughout the day. After that, Mike put his phone away, he began pedaling, and off he went. Later that same night, Mike's father, whose name was Mike Mansholt, was sitting in a hotel room in Croatia, over 600 miles away from Malta. Bernd was actually on his own solo vacation, which was not all that unusual for him. But for right now, he was actually just really looking forward to seeing how his big bike ride, his first, solo trip, how it had gone that day, because he had been told he would get pictures and updates. But so far, his son had not sent any of the pictures that he said he would.
Because he's inside the catacombs going, I've got no reception. I've got to get higher. I've got to get higher. You know he's trapped in them catacombs, don't you? That's obvious.
And he wasn't answering his phone. Like over the last few days, when Bernd had called his son, he just wasn't getting a response, which was like really out of character. So that night, Bernd called Mike's mother in Germany to see if maybe she had heard from their son, but she said no. And it would turn out that Mike's girlfriend, who was actually in Malta, she hadn't heard from him either. Now, Bernd told himself that, his son was just busy adventuring. He's off on this solo trip, he's having a great time, like he's just gotten caught up in it, and who knows about cell service, so he's just telling himself that it's fine and he shouldn't worry about it. Like he's done lots of solo adventuring and he knows how it can be sometimes. Very, intoxicating to go out there on your own. But the next day on July 22nd, Bernd found out from Mike's mother that Mike had missed his flight back home to Germany. And now his mom was on her way to the police to report their son missing. And so Bernd, when he heard this, he immediately had this sickening feeling that something was really wrong here. And so he told Mike's mom that he would get on the next flight to Malta and he would go look for their son. 3 days later, so now 8 days after Mike's family had last heard from him, his father, Bernd, was standing on the steps of the hotel where he was staying in Malta, surrounded by a group of reporters. Bernd was actually holding a press conference about his son's disappearance. And by this point, he was completely desperate. So when Bernd had landed in Malta just a couple of days earlier, he'd quickly learned that the local police had actually already set up search parties for Mike, because staff at Mike's hotel had apparently reported him missing days before Mike's family had. But for whatever reason, the Maltese police never contacted Bernd or Mike's mother. And even though Bernd had thought that was really weird, like the idea they would do that without contacting him, that seemed totally improper. He didn't really know what else to do.
Yeah, but you want to get the ball rolling, don't you? You want to get him searched like the quickest way you can. You need to get him out there to find him. Little did they know that the guy ended up in a Mr. Ballen video because he's stuck in the catacombs like John Jones in the Nutty Putty.
Then sort of jump into action and just try to help the Maltese police search the island, because, his objective here is not to complain, it's to find his son. But so far, even with Bernd's help, there had been no sign of Mike. But, Bernd and the police were not about to give up yet. In fact, that's why Bernd was now doing this press conference. And so Bernd, he issued his prepared statement to the media, basically begging anybody with information about Mike to please come forward. And when he was done, he thanked the reporters for coming out, and then he headed back into his hotel. But as he was walking towards the elevator, his cell phone rang. Bernd pulled his phone out of his pocket, and he recognized the number as the local Maltese police station. And so he knew this call had to be about Mike, which immediately made his heart race. And so Bernd, he answered the phone, and the officer on the other line told him that they did have some news. A few hours later, Bernd was standing over a metal table in the morgue at the local medical examiner's office. He choked back tears as the medical examiner pulled back a sheet and revealed Mike's body. The medical examiner asked Bernd if he could formally identify his son, and Bernd, as he's crying, just nodded. While Bernd was standing there just staring at his son's lifeless body, still very much in shock, the medical examiner began to explain what he thought might have happened to his son. He explained that Mike had been found in this rocky crevice at the bottom of a cliff on the west side of the island, And so it seemed very likely, considering he was clearly biking, that he sort of biked off the cliff and fell to his death. The examiner said
God
that
damn, there's me thinking he's stuck in the catacombs and all he's done the daft gets drove off a cliff on a bike. Been watching too many E.T. films. Right, let's go.
that he sort of biked off the cliff and fell to his death. The examiner said that he'd been dead for about 8 days, which meant, just for reference, that he must have died, hours after he had sent that last message to his father, that voice message, saying how he was going on this trip and he would send pictures. He basically died right after that.
No way.
And so the medical examiner, he went on to say that, the search parties had been looking in that area, but they hadn't found Mike, at least not at first, because his body had not been visible from the top of the cliff. He was sort of way down inside of that crevice. And so Bernd, he's standing there doing his best to take in this new information from the medical examiner. And he's trying to process kind of everything that's happened here, but it was really hard to do that. And also, for some reason, as he was just processing things, it was like he couldn't quite explain it, but he just suddenly thought about the fact that his son always traveled with a backpack. And so because of that, he likely would have had his phone, his wallet, and any other stuff that he was carrying in the bag with him when he fell and died. And for Bernd, a newly grieving father here, it suddenly felt like the most important thing in the world to just have his son's belongings.
He's been murdered.
And so at some point, Bernd looked up at the medical examiner and just said, "Where is my son's backpack?" And the medical examiner looked back at Bernd and sort of looked confused for a minute, and then just said, "There was no backpack." They looked, it was just his body. Nothing else was found.
He's been mugged.
About an hour later, Bernd parked his rental car at the bottom of those cliffs on the west side of the island. And right away,
he's been he's been mugged and thrown off the cliff by some bandits, by some Maltesers. Let's go.
He could see a patch of grass that was surrounded by yellow police tape right up ahead, and he knew that had to be where his son was found. And that was good, because Bernd was here, quite literally, to see where his son had died, to hopefully maybe get some sense of closure, and also to maybe find the backpack that police apparently hadn't found. And so Bernd, he climbed out of the car, and he began walking over to this taped-off area, and as he did, he scanned the cliffs that sort of overlooked this area. They're over 100 feet tall. I mean, they're pretty imposing cliffs, and all he could think of was his son careening off the cliff and falling down to his death. It was like a horrible image.
Yeah.
But Bernd continued walking, and he took his eyes off the cliffs and just began scanning around down below to see if he could just see a backpack, thinking maybe the police weren't looking for it.
In fairness, it could have actually got into the ocean though, couldn't it? The backpack, and then floated off or sunk, depending on what's in it.
No one had found it yet. But, he's looking around and he doesn't see any backpacks. However, he does see something that was weird. A bicycle that he assumed must have been his son's rental was stuck in a nearby bush, like it had gotten caught there when Mike had fallen off the cliff. But the bike, when he walked up to it, didn't have a scratch on it, like it was pristine. So Bernd didn't understand how it could have fallen off of this 100-foot plus cliff and been perfectly okay. Like, how did the bike not sustain any damage? And then, as he's sort of looking at this bike, he looks over at the patch of grass, the taped off section of grass where presumably his son had been laying, and he notices the grass had been freshly cut, like it definitely had been mowed by a lawnmower in the last few days. But then Bernd's thinking, my son was only found 6 hours ago, and supposedly he had been laying in this spot where he fell off the cliff for an entire week. And
the gardener did it. The grass cutter did it. That's what happened.
So how could the grass have been cut in the last few days without someone finding my son's body? Bernd wasn't sure what to make of all this, but he got this feeling that between Mike's missing backpack, the pristine rental bike, and the recently mowed grass, something about his son's death was just not adding up. And so he started to feel like the police in Malta might be missing something. A week later, inside the morgue at the University of Hanover back in Germany, a doctor stood at an autopsy table looking down at Mike's body, which had arrived from Malta earlier that morning. So Mike's body had actually already been autopsied once back in Malta. But a few days ago, Bernd had arranged for his son to be flown back home to Germany from Malta to be taken to this university for a second autopsy. because Bernd did not believe that the police in Malta had really
Fair
done
one.
a good enough job. Like, he felt like there was more to this story than what he was being told. Now, this German doctor who was tasked with the second autopsy had already read over the original autopsy report, so he knew what to expect. Mike clearly had died from blunt force trauma, consistent with falling off a cliff. Like, there was no question that's how he died. And so this doctor assumed, this second autopsy would just be pretty quick and simple. He'd basically confirm what already was known, which is this was an unfortunate tragedy, and that's how Mike died.
Yeah.
However, when this German doctor grabbed a scalpel and began to cut into Mike's abdominal cavity, he pulled back in shock, because what he saw inside of Mike's body didn't make any sense.
Go on.
The doctor quickly set down his scalpel and ran down the hallway to his office, and he called the Maltese medical examiner who'd done the original autopsy and asked him for an explanation because he just couldn't reconcile what he just saw. But the response the medical examiner from Malta gave was so illogical, it seemed like it had to be a lie. So after speaking to that medical examiner, the German doctor hung up and then called Mike's dad, Bernd, to explain what was going on here.
Let's go.
After receiving that call, Bernd was so furious that he actually flew down to Malta again the very next day to demand answers from authorities. But he didn't get any answers, because the police just repeated the same bizarre explanation that the medical examiner had. And that's how it's been for the last 10 years.
Wow, so it's
Officially,
not been solved.
Mike's death was ruled accidental, caused by his fall off the cliff, and the case is closed. Officials have never explained Mike's missing backpack, the undamaged bike, or the freshly mowed grass.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that officials have never clearly explained is what that German doctor who performed the second autopsy discovered when he cut into Mike's abdominal cavity. When that doctor opened Mike up, he discovered that all of Mike's internal organs were missing. And the bizarre explanation that everybody in Malta kept giving, like starting with the medical examiner, was, well, what must have happened is Mike's organs must have been eaten by rodents while he was lying outside dead. But the German doctor didn't find any bite marks anywhere on Mike's body.
He's been harvested. Mike has been harvested. Or the doctor who did the autopsy in Malta has nicked the organs when he did the autopsy and sold them on the black market. That's what I think. I was thinking someone may have killed him for his organs. But then again, it could be the autopsy, the coroner in Malta.
But the German doctor didn't find any bite marks anywhere on Mike's body. In fact, if anything, there were clear signs that rodents didn't do this, because there were clean, almost surgically precise incisions inside of Mike's body where his organs had been, like they had been intentionally cut out. In 2021, Bernd filed a criminal complaint against the medical examiner who did Mike's initial autopsy.
He's nicked him, hasn't he?
But the public prosecutors in Malta rejected his complaint, so it never went anywhere.
Oh,
Bernd believes that someone
damn.
out there knows something, and he just hopes that one day they come forward.
I mean, I was going to say that maybe he was killed by somebody and they harvested his organs and then put him in the crevice like he fell off and then like planted his bike, etc. in the area. But then when you think back that the Maltese doctor is the one who did the autopsy, I reckon he's nicked him. I was only joking at the beginning of this because he said what they found inside his body. I was going to say Paradise Lost where they nick all your organs. I didn't actually realise that this story was going that way. That's crazy, man. That is crazy. The family picnic. Let's go. What, they eating organs?
Around noon on April 21st, 1996, a young woman
20
named
years before
Carolina
that one.
Suarez parked her car in front of a house out in the middle of the woods that her family owned. This property was located about an hour outside of Paris, France.
Okay.
And the house in many ways was sort of unremarkable, but this property had really become a central meeting spot for the Suarez family because of their backyard. There was like a clearing in the back of the house that was great for picnics and barbecues.
Okay.
And just now, as Carolina walked behind the house out to that clearing, she saw there were dozens of people already out there that were eating and dancing and chatting and having a great time. So the Suarez family was very close-knit, and the whole family, like everybody, got together here every year for a picnic. And so Carolina, she looked around and she saw a bunch of picnic tables and blankets set up out on the grass, and she saw her aunts and her uncles and all her cousins. But then she frowned because she did not see her fiance, Armando Noguera, who was supposed to be there already.
Is he
So
dead now?
that morning, Armando had left his and Carolina's apartment early, so ahead of Carolina, and he had told her that he was just driving down to the woods with her cousin Joao to gather firewood before this big picnic. But now, Carolina saw Joao at one of the picnic tables, and Armando was not with him, or anywhere else for that matter. And so
Okay.
Carolina, she walked over to Joao and sat down next to him and just said, "Hey, where's Armando? Where did he go after you guys went and got firewood?" But Joao turned and looked at her like he didn't understand what she was saying. And then he just said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen Armando all day." Carolina
dear.
was really confused by this, and she began to wonder if maybe she had misheard Armando that morning. Like, had he said he was actually going somewhere else with somebody else? Did she mishear him? That she thought he said going to the woods with Joao, but it had been something else?
The thing is, when you don't understand something, or something's not making sense in your head, that's when you do start questioning yourself, isn't it? And then you start driving yourself daft. And then you can't really be mad at the person when they do actually turn up, because you're thinking, well, did he say that or did he not? You know what I mean? But I mean, he's in a Mr. Ballen video, which means it's not going to end well.
But she's thinking like, I know I didn't. It was really clear what he said he was going to go do. And so all day that day, Carolina just sort of, mindlessly chatted with family members and sort of, pretended like she was a part of the picnic. But
Yeah.
really, she's just waiting for Armando to show up. But he never did.
Armando's
And by
gone.
the time the picnic was over and she was driving home that night, she went from being concerned to actually being kind of mad. Like, Armando had actually been acting kind of distant and jumpy lately, and Carolina had begun to worry that maybe what she was seeing here is he was getting cold feet about their upcoming wedding. That's why he didn't come here. Maybe he didn't want to be around her family and commit to doing things like this. Maybe he just wanted nothing to do with her. And the more she thought about this,
Maybe
the more
he's
it made
cheating on
her
her.
feel hurt and very frustrated. But she also figured that even if that was the case, that he had sort of blown off this picnic and lied to her about what he was doing that day, that ultimately, very likely, he would be back at their apartment when she got back. And so when she saw him, she could ask him and figure out what happened. But when Carolina got home to their cramped, rundown apartment, Armando was not there. And so once again, Carolina was worried. Like, not mad anymore, just worried. And so
Okay, she just wants to know
Carolina
he's
went
all
straight
right.
into the kitchen and she picked up her landline phone, and then she opened up her nearby address book and began calling everybody Armando knew. But everyone she talked to said they hadn't heard from him all day and had no idea where he was. That is, until Carolina called Armando's friend, Manuel Freitas. And Manuel said that actually he'd met Armando for coffee that very morning. Manuel said that that morning, Armando had seemed really on edge. He was sweating, he was tapping his feet constantly, and he kept looking around nervously. But he wouldn't explain what was going on, except to say that he had accidentally uncovered a secret. And so Carolina, as she's listening to this, she's thinking like, this doesn't really make any sense. I mean, she knew Armando had been acting a little bit nervous lately, but she had sort of chalked that up to him being, nervous about their upcoming wedding. Whatever Manuel was describing, this sounded way more serious. And so Carolina asked, like, where did Armando go after they met for coffee? And Manuel, he's like, oh, well, I'm surprised you don't know. He told me he was going to that picnic of yours. He said he was going to see you at your family picnic.
Okay.
The next week, on May 1st, Captain Jean-Paul Capetti of the Paris police parked his car in front of the Suarez family's property out in the woods. And behind the Suarez house, he saw there was already a team of officers searching the back of the property. And so he walked over to join them. So a few days ago, Armando's fiancée, Carolina, as well as Armando's friend, Manuel, had come to the Paris police station to report Armando missing. And Capetti had immediately interviewed Manuel, Carolina, and also a few members of Carolina's family, but none of them had seen or heard from Armando in over a week. Now, Manuel had said something about Armando knowing a secret that could have potentially put him in danger. But
Yeah.
at least so far, nobody else in Armando's life had any clue
It's
what that...
either like cartel or something have caught up with him because he's got this secret, or he's playing away. Something's going to have happened. It's one of them situations, gangster type, I think.
that secret could have been, or in any way what that could have been about. And then also, as far as Capetti could gather, Armando was really just a normal guy who seemed to stay out of trouble. And so they just didn't really have a whole lot to go on at all. Not just the secret, but in general, there was like nothing. Now, the last anybody had heard was that Armando was supposed to be on his way to a picnic at this property where Capetti was, this big family picnic. So since this was like the only clear lead they had at this point that they could actually move on, the police had come out here to the woods, to this house, to search the area in case maybe Armando was out here. Who knows? I mean, someone had said he'd come out to the area to gather firewood for the picnic. Someone said he had just gone to the picnic, but maybe he's here on the property or he's out in the outskirts, but there could be some sign of him. Let's go look.
Yeah.
But when Capetti caught up with one of the officers in the search team, she told him that they'd been scouring this property and the surrounding woods all day, and there had been zero sign of Armando. And so Capetti, he walked back over to the main picnic area right behind the house, which was, buzzing with officers at this point, and he began looking around, figuring at this point, why not, take a look for himself.
Yeah.
But the property was just totally unremarkable. It was just like this blank back area, just grass, basically, where the picnic had taken place. And now any, furniture that had been out during the picnic had long been taken in.
Have you dug the ground
It was just
up?
this blank backyard and then, trees. That was it. Like, there was nothing out here. And Capetti's like, man, where else could this guy be? A week later, Capetti was sitting at his desk at the police station, just wondering what to even do with this case. By this point, Armando still had not been found, there was still no sign of him, and there basically was no real evidence. So they did continue to search that property out in the woods, but after a very long search, nothing was turned up. And the entire Suarez family had been interviewed by this point, and they'd all been extremely friendly and cooperative and tried to offer up anything they could, but nothing had led to Armando.
Right.
And there was still no sign that even any foul play had been involved in Armando's disappearance. So it wasn't even clear if a crime had been committed at this point. And so Capetti couldn't help but think, maybe Armando wasn't actually missing at all. Maybe he, an adult man, had just chosen to run away. Like, what if he was doing this on purpose? That would explain a lot of what was going on.
I mean, this day and age, what was it, 1996? Were mobile phones around then? I think they were just coming into, mind you, they were just being invented and just coming into circulation, weren't they, around 1996, 97? It'd probably be a stretch for him to have one, to be honest. I was going to say, you could just send a text, couldn't you? But 1996. Right, okay.
And there actually was two pretty compelling reasons for why Armando might want to do that.
He's got another
His own
girlfriend.
fiancée, Carolina, had mentioned in her interviews that Armando had been acting kind of nervous in the last couple of weeks, and she had attributed that to him being worried about the upcoming wedding, that he was getting cold feet and maybe didn't want to get married after all.
He's going to run away.
So maybe he ran away to avoid getting married.
Facts.
And then the other,
Hey, if that's the reason,
he could have chosen
if that's
to
the reason,
run away by choice was maybe to...
If that's the reason, then I'm with you, Armando.
Compelling reason he could have chosen to run away by choice was maybe to do with that secret that he apparently had uncovered, according to his friend Manuel. I mean, the area where Carolina and Armando lived, where their apartment was
Rough, that, isn't it?
not particularly safe. I mean, there was quite a bit of crime that happened in the area. Maybe Armando, even though he himself didn't show any signs of, getting directly involved in criminal activity, maybe he uncovered criminal activity or got wrapped up in something, maybe unintentionally, and that was the secret. And maybe he fled to protect himself from, repercussions from knowing this secret, this criminal secret. Also, Capetti had found out that Armando had family in Portugal. And so if he had, run away by choice, he likely would have gone there. And if he had, Capetti knew he really couldn't do much to track him down because French police didn't have any jurisdiction in Portugal. So this would be like
Surely
a
they
really
could ring the
uniquely
Portuguese
difficult
police,
problem.
though.
So without really knowing what else to do, Capetti ultimately sent out an alert to the Portuguese authorities to basically look for this guy, Armando. He could have fled our country. He could be, staying in Portugal. We don't know. Like, keep an eye out for him. And then he waited, hoping that one day he would get a call from Portugal telling him that Armando had been found. But the call never came. And after a few months, Capetti moved on. A year later, in April of 1997, Capetti was at his desk, buried in paperwork on dozens of cases, when another detective suddenly barged into his office saying he might have information on that Armando Nogueira case. It took Capetti a few seconds to even remember who Armando Nogueira was. But then, as the details of the case began coming back to him, he expected to hear that the authorities in Portugal had finally found something. But this other detective walked in and dropped a file on Capetti's desk, and when he opened it up, the documents inside were not from Portugal. They were from the Netherlands. The detective explained that the case that he was currently investigating was nothing to do with Armando. It was about a different young man whose body had been found in Amsterdam a couple of weeks ago. And he had been identified as a resident of Paris, France, and his name was Jose Martins. And so Capetti began flipping through the documents on his desk, not really understanding what any of this Jose Martins guy had to do with Armando, until he got to a list of Jose's friends and associates who had been questioned in the Jose case. And right away, he saw a name that he recognized.
Armando.
Manuel Freitas, the friend who had reported Armando missing, the friend who claimed that Armando had uncovered some secret. A week later, Capetti walked into an interrogation room at the Paris police station where Manuel was waiting. And the moment the door opened, Manuel practically jumped out of his chair. He was sweating, he was twitchy, and he kept glancing out the window like he was afraid that somebody was watching him. It had taken Capetti's team several days to track Manuel down because he hadn't been at any of his known addresses, and then every time they'd gotten a tip about where he was staying, he'd be gone by the time police got there. Dodging the police was obviously already quite suspicious. And now Manuel was acting so nervous, now that he was finally in custody, that Capetti felt certain that he had to be hiding something. Either he was involved directly or indirectly in Armando's disappearance or Jose's murder, or he at least knew what happened to one or both of them. So Capetti just sat down and asked Manuel, "Why have you been ducking the police?" And Manuel, who's looking so nervous, he just blurts out that he was just really scared. He said he didn't want to become the fourth victim. And Capetti, when he heard this, he was a little bit confused because at this point he thought there were really only two victims. I mean, there was obviously Armando, who was still missing, and there was this Jose guy who was dead. So we asked Manuel, what are you talking about? Who was the third victim? Or who are these victims? What do you mean? And Manuel, he launched into this bizarre story about a man that Capetti had never even heard of, who apparently had been killed 3 years ago in a small town in Portugal. As Manuel raced through all these random-seeming details, Capetti really didn't understand where the story was even going. But slowly, as Manuel kept talking, the pieces clicked into place, and Capetti realized exactly what must have happened to Armando.
Let's go, Mr. Ballen.
The whole time that Armando had been missing, he'd actually been right under Capetti's nose. It would turn out Armando really did uncover a really big secret right before he went missing. And that secret was that 2 years before Armando disappeared in the summer of 1994, 3 young hitmen had been hired to kill a man in Portugal. And after the murder, they'd all sworn each other to secrecy. But one of those hitmen had eventually broken that promise, and that was Jose Martins, the man who had been found dead in the Netherlands. Jose had not been able to handle the guilt of what he and the others had done, so he confessed the whole story to his friend, Armando Nogueira. And Armando freaked out because one of the other hitmen involved in this murder was his fiancée, Carolina Suarez's cousin, Joao.
Talking about keeping it in the family. Oh, shit. He's not getting, no wonder he run away.
Murder was his fiancée, Carolina Suarez's cousin, Joao Suarez. And when Joao found out that Armando knew their big secret, he knew he had to get rid of both Jose and Armando to keep them from talking. And so on the morning of the big Suarez family picnic out in the woods, after Armando met his friend Manuel for coffee, Joao had picked Armando up in his car. And they had driven out into the woods together, supposedly to gather up firewood before everybody else arrived for this picnic. But what actually happened when they arrived in the woods is two of Joao's other friends, including one who was also involved in the murder in Portugal, they were out in the woods waiting for them. And when Armando got out of the car, they all ganged up on him and they killed him.
Shit.
And then after he was dead, they brought his body into the backyard of the Suarez property, so behind that house out in the woods, and they buried him right in the backyard. And then after he was all buried up, they just put a blanket over his gravesite. And then hours later, the entire Suarez family, including Carolina, Armando's fiance, had their picnic right on that spot. They were literally eating food on top of where Armando was buried, just feet below them. Finally, in 2009,
Jesus Christ.
Where Armando was buried, just feet below them. Finally, in 2009, Joao Suarez, along with his two friends, were all found guilty of Armando's murder. But because of the amount of time that had passed since the crime, they each only got 8 to 10 years in prison.
Wow.
They were also investigated for the murder of Jose Martins, but no one was ever charged, and the case remains officially unsolved.
Shit. So technically, Armando did actually make it to the picnic. He was just under it. That's mad. That is mad. Oh, I'll tell you what, we kill him, right? We'll bury him and then we'll throw a blanket on him and everyone can have a picnic on top of him. That is sick, man. That is sick. I mean, the first story, what the hell? I mean, they've nicked his organs. I get why they've done it. They sell them on the black market probably because, obviously, in different countries and stuff, organs are not easy to come by. I don't know what it's like in Malta, there's nothing in Malta, is there? It's like a retirement holiday fucking place for old people. But yeah, the second one, wow. Killed him, buried underneath the underneath the picnic, man. They all sat eating food while he was missing, and he was there. Malta is beautiful, actually. I'm not saying it's not. It's a retirement place, though. Yeah, we're doing this on a stream. They're just answering back to what people are saying to me. Anyway, what did you guys think of these stories? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to give Mr. Ballen a like, a follow, etc. And if you want to hang around here too, I'd appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button. See you next time.